I would love to see women sit up on the stand on Sundays, like the Relief Society president. I'd love for women to be given positions that aren't necessarily reserved for males.
Hey guys, welcome back to Saints Unscripted today. I'm with my lovely co-hosts, Lauren and Sabrina.
Hey.
And we're talking about women in the church. It kind of goes in waves. Have you guys noticed when women in the church is talked about a lot and then it kind of goes down and then it comes up again based on like certain things that happen? So a lot of this recent conversation goes back to when Sister Dennis spoke in the women's conference and said something along the lines of
the church is.
Do you have the quote easily accessible?
The quote that the church, so the snippet that they shared on that Instagram post says, "There is no other religious organization in the world that I know of that has so broadly given power and authority to women." And it was just that sentence. That's the only thing that they shared originally. And then they revised in the caption and expanded a little bit.
Yeah, because she did go on to say that she was just talking about, she's like, I know that other religions also call women as pastors and in leaderships of position and all these things. But also in a more general sense, she was just talking about all the things that the women do within the church, also in the context of working under the authority or with the authority of the priesthood, in their callings, et cetera, et cetera. So she did expound on that, but that little snippet kind of taken out of context definitely caused a lot of stirring. How do you kind of approach this as a woman, of faith? Where do we start?
I think it's important first to look at how do you feel personally as a woman in the church? Does the church help you in any way or has helped you in any way to feel empowered, to feel more free, or has it done the opposite?
That's a really good question.
Yeah, from personal experience, I guess a mixture. And I think that a lot of people have a mixture. A lot of people are heavy on one side or heavy on the other. But one thing that comes to me right away is when sisters are called to be missionaries, they still are able to teach with the authority of God. I would say, in my mind, that's equal to the way that the elders teach. And I feel like that's a lot of empowerment, to be a woman sharing the gospel, and being able to work, and wear the name of Jesus. That's one thing. Another thing that I think of is working in the temple. Specifically, I worked in the temple. When you do initiatories as a woman, you are given like that authority. There's no men present in the initiatories. But yeah, so those are two things I can think of right away that I feel like are empowering for women.
Yeah.
In my experience.
What about you, Lauren?
For me, as someone who's only been in the church for like 5 years now and had a really weird adjustment starting out because COVID hit immediately after, so I couldn't even go. I wouldn't say that I've had moments where I have really felt empowered within the church, but I also don't feel empowered generally as a woman in the world.
Right.
So what I can say is, though, after joining the church, I feel safer as a woman. And I think I can say that just because I align my identity more with being a daughter of God. So just safer in day-to-day life. Maybe that's more to do so with my understanding of God now, my relationship with him, though, than the church itself. And I know there's people who would disagree with that.
Do you think that being a daughter of God, that idea is you feel like you have more worth as a human now? Or
I feel like I understand my worth more that I already had. Does that make sense? Yeah, I understand my worth more. I understand the power that I have to create things. But in terms of being in the church, I don't know if I'd necessarily say I felt empowered just by that. Does that make sense?
Yes, definitely.
I'm kind of trying to disconnect the idea of the church from God, even though it is the Lord's church, because there are things that happen within the church culturally, which I feel is where we see a lot of the misogyny happen, even if it's very subtle. And then there's things that are doctrine and God's law. And when it comes to doctrine, I've never felt less than because I'm a woman.
Yes. Yeah, that totally makes sense. I like how you said the word safer. That's something I hadn't really heard or somebody say before. So I like that. And yeah, I think that when it comes to the discussion of women in the church, a lot of that does point to the organization of the church. And for me personally, I guess I'm just like your typical LDS girl. I never really struggled with that growing up. I had great I have all brothers, and they're really great people, and my dad is a wonderful person, and I married a great person. Like the men in my life who are living their covenants and are following Christ, like they're really good people. And so I never really thought about this issue much growing up until the last few years. And I'm like, okay, I definitely recognize that there are some things that are difficult for a lot of people regarding the organization of the church, regarding like leadership,
Right.
kind of ward organization. Even that, I felt like the wards that I was in growing up were pretty great. I never had issues with that, but that does not mean that other people experience the same as me.
Right.
And listening to people's experiences has definitely made me think more about it and be more empathetic to that. Because before I was like, if you have a problem with how things are run, then you just need to go pray more,
Yeah.
and I don't think that's, I mean, I think obviously you should always be praying and maintaining that relationship with the Lord, but that doesn't mean that you can't notice things and think like, okay, how does this affect me as a woman? And
To piggyback off of that, two things can be true at once. So we can acknowledge that there's a lot of good in the church and there's a lot of great men in the church. I've had some fantastic bishops who have helped me through really hard trials in my life and have given me the guidance of like another father. And as somebody who doesn't have a close relationship with their family, that was very necessary for me to feel good and heal and overcome things. And so I can acknowledge all of that and look at how I'm treated and respected and be thankful for all of that, but also see where people haven't felt that way and also see where there is subtle misogyny happening and strive to or think about how can I participate in changing that over time. It's not that we have to villainize the church because good and bad can exist at the same time. It's just about, okay, these are the things we're doing right. Let's keep those. How can we improve the things that are not right now? Does that make sense?
yes, definitely. So you talked about how you feel not really empowered as a woman in general, but you do feel empowered knowing you're a daughter of God, not necessarily within the church structure.
No.
Let's talk a little bit more about that. What about the church structure would make you feel more empowered as a woman?
I would love to see women sit up on the stand on Sundays. There's some of them up there. I'm up there because I lead the music, but I'd love to see more women up there, like the Relief Society president, Relief Society presidency. I'd love for women to be given positions that aren't necessarily reserved for males, things like the financial clerk or the Sunday school president.
Yeah.
I would really appreciate it if women were allowed to hold their baby while their baby was giving a blessing. Because
some people might not know that that's not allowed.
Yeah, that was the thing.
Yeah,
I brought it up to people and they said, well, I don't think it's a big idea that the dad holds him. And I'm like, it's not a big idea that the dad holds the baby.
Yeah.
But what is a big deal is that the mother's not allowed to.
She can't.
That's what makes it a
not
problem.
Really an option.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If it was an option, then it wouldn't be a big deal if the mom didn't want to or if the father wanted to more. And so there's these little things. You see how all these things are very subtle? Like there's something you might not notice just going to church every Sunday. It actually took me a while to notice. But they're important because when we let these subtle things just keep going on and on and on, it creates more power imbalances between men and women in the church. I mean, women are great organizers. That was acknowledged by President Packer, I think it was. I think it was a quote you shared.
Yeah, well, yeah.
But we have abilities to organize and lead, and we have a lot of qualities that strengthen us to do that are divine qualities from Heavenly Father. And I think those should be put to use more in the church than they are right now. And that would help me feel more empowered.
Something else I think of is every 6 months, I hope that there are more women speaking in General Conference, and there just never are.
No.
Yeah.
It is always like the same little handful. Once I heard someone ask a group of members of the church if they could list the names of the women in the Relief Society presidency, and they weren't able to, like off the top of their heads. And I think that that should not be the case, because we should be excited to hear from those women as well. We should know their names, and we don't. So at General Conference, you have maybe like, 2 of the women of the 5 that speak, and I think that should be different. That part every time at conference, I want more women that we recognize and are excited to hear from.
Yeah. And I feel the same way. I would love to see more women's voices in conference. I also wonder how would we do that? So, because there's only so many women leaders right now, if we were to have all of them speak more, they would all have to speak like every conference. But I guess there's a lot of Quorum of the 12 who speak every conference. So if they're like chill with that, but we would be hearing from pretty much every woman leader every conference. So I don't know if that's the reason the church is like, I'm not like saying it's better this way or that, or like defending the church for doing that. Does it have to be women who are leaders, or does that mean we have to open more kind of positions for women to be in so that they can speak in conference? Do you know what I mean?
The second one, I would love that.
Yes. Like more women leaders so that more women can speak in conference, because right now the pool that they're choosing from is quite small. You know what I mean? So I don't know what the solution to that is, but either way, it would be really nice to hear more from women in General Conference.
Yes. Yeah. More women leaders for the church would do so much good, not only for providing women with more opportunities, but also for the men in the church. I feel like we have a lot of men who grow up in the church culturally who then go into jobs in the outside world, and they don't know how to respond to female leadership. It's because they're not used to seeing female authority figures often in the church when they go on Sundays or within their cultural communities. So it's not that they purposefully are like, no, I don't want to be led by you. It's that they don't know how to operate under that, which is a huge problem. So we don't only need women advocating for it, we need men advocating for it too.
I wonder if this just came into my head. I've never thought about it before, but we kind of consider leaders of the church or we just consider marriage as like a family unit. So, and just like a unit of one. So I don't think they would ever call a prophet who wasn't married. Or I don't think they would ever call 12 apostles who aren't married. There is a single woman, Sister Yi, in the Relief Society presidency, but I feel like for every man, there is a woman there right by his side. President Nelson said in the women's devotional, but he said something along the lines of how he loves working with the women leaders of the church, but no one has influenced him more in his life than his first wife, who then passed away, and then his current wife, and how they have so much influence on them. Honestly, we hear from them in devotionals, like their wives, when apostles come, like their wives will speak. Like, I don't know, I'd love to hear from their wives in General Conference. Is that
what I love
crazy though?
Is so actually in a General Conference when President Kimball was prophet, he wasn't able to attend one time, and he prepared a talk called "The Role of Righteous Women," and his wife gave the address. And I think that is probably one of the most powerful talks on women given by women, even though the prophet prepared it.
I think in addition to leadership positions, we also have to look at like how we're taught culturally in the church to fill certain roles. Now, there are divine roles, but there are kind of cultural expectations for both men and women. And as a convert, something I've noticed in the dating world within the LDS church is that I feel expected a lot of the time to become a wife and a mother, and that's it. I feel that a lot of guys I've met have this assumption that that's what I'll want to do, and that if I don't want to do that, something's kind of wrong, because I'm meant to be a supporter and an aid and a helper. I'm meant to use my leadership qualities there. And I understand where they're coming from, and those who choose to be mothers, I mean, I want to be a mother. I want to have my own children one day, but it isn't the only thing I want to do, you know? I want a career. I've been aspiring for a career for as long as I could remember. And when I bring this up, I remember one guy once asked me, if you're going on like business trips all the time, what are you going to do about having children? This was our first date.
Yeah.
And I just...
First date?
First date.
Come on, at least save it for the third, my dude.
I didn't even bring up business trips. I was just like, yeah, this is what I'm working towards, and I'm really excited about it, and this is where I think my talents can be most of use in the world. And, that was the first question.
Goodness.
Yeah.
I should have asked you more about that. Like, tell me more about your pursuits in life.
You would think.
I am fascinated. I would love to hear that. I know nowadays it is so much more common for both spouses to be working.
Yeah, and you're still asking
in their careers.
Them, where is your kid to the mom and not to the
Yes, yet societally, and that does bleed into the church as well, we still have those kind of internal misogynistic thoughts about what women should be doing. And now women are both working and raising kids and running the house and all those things, and it's exhausting. But I don't know. Here we are. We got to make a living, I guess.
It's shown me that I'm kind of like fighting against the grain a little bit here, where it's like, yes, I want these things and I want to fulfill what are these divine purposes, but I also, that's not the highest thing that I'm aspiring to. And I had seen this video that pointed out a scripture reference that I want to reference right now because I think it's so good. It's Luke 11:27. And in it, Christ is preaching, and it says, "A certain woman of the company lifted up her voice and said unto him, Blessed is the womb that bare thee." And so she's saying, blessed is your mother, Mary, for giving birth to the Son of God. And he responds, "Yea, rather, blessed are they that hear the word of God and keep it." Culturally at the time, the highest thing a woman could aspire to be was a mother. That was a big accomplishment. And so this woman was like congratulating his mother for giving birth to the Son of God. What a huge achievement. And what he's saying is not that that's not important, but rather the most blessed or the highest thing a woman could aspire to be is actually an active daughter of God. Similarly, the highest thing a man can aspire to be is an active son of God. So he's saying, yes, blessed is her for this, but blessed are those who hear my word and keep it, man and woman. And I think that's so important because that's the highest degree of righteousness on this earth here. Active daughter of God, active son of God.
One thing I think we need to just mention is Jesus is the person that we are trying to get closer to, the person we're trying to learn from, the person we're trying to be like. And Jesus loved and respected women so much. And you know that from reading Jesus to Christ, from any other experiences. Who saw him when he was resurrected first? It was a woman. Mary saw him first, and she testified, and she went and found other people. Who anointed his feet? It was a woman. And even when the men were saying, "What are you doing? Why are you wasting that?"
Yeah.
He was like, "No, let the woman do what she does because she understands and she has an amazing testimony." And for me, with a lot of recognizing that there are things that are not equal in the organization that we live in that are run by men as in human, but also literally men, but that even though things are not perfect because we know that, we recognize that, that I'm on a journey to get closer to Jesus. And so I'm not accepting all things that bother me as great and wonderful because that's the way it is. Like I like to question things and I like to wonder why they are the way they are and try to bring that up when I can. But at the end, I'm here for Jesus. And I think that we all are. And
I love that.
Yeah, that's really important.
It's such an important reminder because I feel like a lot of people think that when you join this church or stay in this church, even with all of its problems around inequality between the two genders, then you are choosing something that promotes misogyny, or you are choosing something that promotes inequality. And because the church is centered on Jesus Christ, that couldn't be farther from the truth. And those who stay in the church, especially the women, they don't know how passionate we are about this. And the fact that we are trying to make change happen. We're not just passive standbyers letting things happen. I mean, the whole reason we're having this conversation is because we see where improvement can happen and we are striving for it to improve. I mean, we rely on Jesus Christ, the biggest change maker and advocate for change of all time.
I would hope that people see me and don't judge me for being a member of the church and putting that blanket statement on that, like the fact that I accept all of these things, you know? I just feel like that's not fair. I feel like that's not fair to do to anybody for anything.
Yeah.
Because we all have these different paths and these different ways that we approach our life. And I second that with what Sabrina said about looking to Jesus Christ. Like, he is the reason I am in this church. Like, him, and knowing that he is living, that he is the Christ, like, and the Book of Mormon is a huge part of that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel so solid in my testimony of Jesus Christ that I'm willing to work with the church. You know, I'm willing to work with these things because from what I have seen in my life, it has empowered me as an individual, thus empowering me as a woman. But yeah, it's okay to see that there are some changes. And President Nelson also, I know I'm referencing him a lot, but I liked a lot of the things he said in the women's devotional. But he said that as soon as the faith of the women in the world, as soon as that diminishes, the world can never recover from that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And so we do have this influence, and we need to be speaking about it. We need to be communicating and having these conversations, because that's what drives change, and that's what brings good things about. Like, women have really good things to say. So,
and the church has confirmed they're listening to us. When there was all those comments on that Instagram post that we brought up in the beginning, they responded to that in a very respectful, understanding, and accepting way. And they said they will take all of those thoughts into consideration as they move forward with decisions that they make. That's a really important step, because your daughter or your daughter's daughter or whoever in the future of the church, whoever decides to stay, is going to look at the work that we put in to change it to what it becomes in their day. And then they can make more positive change moving forward.
Yeah.
mm.
And what something that you said, Kaitlyn, that just is like ringing in my ear, is in the best way. It's just that without the faith of women, you know, what would happen? And I think that has a lot to do with, because we are like biologically built to be mothers, and the influence of a mother is just like immeasurable.
Mm-hmm.
And every single powerful man out there has a mother that I would hope helped them a lot on their path. And so we're so necessary. And I think that's just like, don't ever downgrade the women that influence you. And you, if you're a woman, and if you're a man, you know women, and they've influenced you too, and even if you don't recognize it.
To add to that, statistically, if a mother leaves a religion or a church, the family is more likely to leave than if any other member of the family leaves. And I think that is so important to remember.
Yeah, I think it was like 70% or something.
Mm-hmm.
Brett and I were talking about that the other day.
Mm-hmm.
It's just wild how much influence just a woman has on her family, thus on society, thus on her neighbors and her friends and people around her. Like, I love that when they established the Relief Society, when Emma Smith was establishing the Relief Society, they were so focused on just coming up with the right name. They wanted to provide relief. They wanted to be there as an aid to help women and children and others in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that in my life personally, when I am looking more to my role as how I can be there for somebody and how I can serve someone and how I can follow Christ in that way, I find that it's easier for me to feel my own empowerment. And I think that I just hope that we as women in the church don't forget that aspect of our role within the church, being there to serve others and to make the world better. I just feel really passionately about that, because there's just so much that we can do. Like, I just feel so much better when I think a little less of myself and I'm helping others more. I'm not saying to forget yourself completely and not give yourself any self-love or self-help and whatnot. But I do think that aspect of making the world better by serving just emanates so much of what is a woman to me. So I just wanted to add that. That's what the Relief Society is. Like, that's what it was originally established to do.
There's so much we can say on this topic. We can talk about modesty. We can talk about garments. We can talk about Heavenly Mother, or not. But I think because we have so much time, if you guys want to see a part 2, or if there's anything specific you want us to discuss about when it comes to women in the church, let us know in the comments and we'll make another video about it. If you want to see a recent episode we did on the topic of modesty with Dr. Finlayson Fife, click somewhere on the screen, wherever it is. I'm not sure.
We'll see you next time.